Good afternoon. My name's Clark Curry. I'm the operations director here at Discovery Green. I'm here with our park manager and horticulturist, Brian Wilmer. We're here to talk and look at our gardens. Obviously, the earlier freeze this month or into February caused substantial damage to the landscaping. And we just want to talk a little bit about what we did and what we're doing to help these gardens through this difficult weather situation. Brian, what did we do to take care of the gardens before the freeze?
Absolutely, Clark. We did a variety of things. We started by cutting some of the plants back so that we could easily put frost cloth. It's like a barrier that goes over the top of the plants. It's designed to keep frost from settling onto the top of the plants. Here, typically, if we get a cold snap, it'll drop down below 32 degrees for an hour or two, and this fabric will keep frost from settling on the plants and burning the plants. So what we did here was we cut some of these back so that we could easily cover it up with the freeze cloth. So we did that. We also drained our irrigation system. We have the ability to drain most of the water out of the lines. We were partially successful in that. There are some areas that, as we know now, we cannot easily drain. So we're gonna.
Is that up by the backflow device?
It is indeed.
That's the highest point of our irrigation system. So we could drain everything past that, I guess.
Yeah, we drained everything in our system, but where the city supply meets our system, we weren't able to obviously drain the city's water supply. So where the city water supply met our backflow, it froze and burst those valves.
And that was a brass valve.
It was a solid brass valve, and it got so cold that it froze and cracked a solid brass valve. And so unfortunately, that's the start of our irrigation system, and until we get that fixed, our entire irrigation system is kaput, as we say in the landscaping world.
Demand for all plumbing parts. I know what we're still trying to find the correct part.
Yeah, we've been hunting. We've been trying to be pretty creative with some duct tape magic, but it hasn't really worked out for us.
So I guess is that frost cloth really, like you said, a protection, or is it just? I guess it holds some soil heat underneath it.
It does indeed. It works really well if it only dips down below cold for a short period of time. Here it got unprecedentedly cold for a very long period of time. So it doesn't have any insulation value. It will hold a little ground heat in, but if it drops down below freezing for a long period of time, those plants are going to freeze. Unless you have a sort of a heat source or something, or they're sheltered in a courtyard or something like that, they're not going to be protected by freeze cloth.
Is the damage you're seeing typical of what we usually experience each winter?
No, sir. This is an unprecedented amount of damage that we have here. As you can see, it's really knocked everything back. This is what we call our tropical garden, as you know, and this is full of all kinds of lush tropical stuff. It really took a big hit. We have our gingers here have been cut back. Those are oleanders. We have our philodendrons and hibiscus over there, and
Ixora.
We have plumbago. Our bird of paradise is over here. Our now stubs of paradise.
So is all of this going to live and come back?
We think that most of this is going to come back. You have to realize, like these magnolia trees here, their roots go deep down into the ground. So those roots are protected. Most of these, the roots go a foot or so into the ground, and the freeze won't penetrate all the way down into the ground. In some of our areas where we have annual color and their roots only go a short period in, that freeze is going to freeze the entire plant. So here what we've done is we've cut things back, anticipating that they will either grow back from the ground or they will grow back from the stems themselves.
Yeah, these look like they actually grow right out of the ground.
They do.
And so that root system's still there. Whereas those, say hibiscus, that's a shrub, so any new growth is going to come off those branches, right?
Exactly, that's exactly right. So we've cut everything back. We've left the stems coming up so that we can wait and see if they will branch and grow out from the trunks.
So why, like this plant right here, some of it's real green and some of it's real brown?
So we had warm weather before we had the freeze, and these guys had started their spring growth. So they had a lot of tender new growth that was coming up. The older leaves are a little bit hardier, but the new tender new growth really took a hit because when they're growing and they're new, they have a lot of water in them. Right. And you can kind of tell the plants that have very little water in their leaves or their stems, like these azaleas, they're fairly dry. If you crush up a leaf, it doesn't have much water in it. When these were growing, if you took a growing new stem and you crushed it up, you would see that there was a lot of like sap and juice. Anything that has a lot of water in it is going to have a really hard time when a freeze comes along. So the older established leaves, they're grown and they're dry, but the tender new growing ones were pretty wet and they took a real hit.
Standing here, it's interesting. We look at this big planting area of the same plant, and right there in the middle, there's really not brown, it's green, and we have those trees over it. I guess even just that kind of cover can help plants in a way.
Absolutely. The more cover, the better. It's interesting that these Mexican plums are still blooming. They're completely unaffected by the cold. But yeah, any little bit of cover, and you can see like a line of shrubs that goes next to the building. The building will give it a little bit of a cover or a little bit more warmth, and there's a lot of difference. We have trees that turn really brown, but when they're around there's a light that goes up into them, the leaves around the light are greener than the ones because it gives a little bit more heat than the air.
And so, would you recommend or suggest that everybody just start cutting everything back now?
So it kind of depends, like I said, on what the plants are. If it's a woody plant where your roots go way down into the ground, you should probably remove some of the dead foliage, but I wouldn't cut those way back. If it's an annual plant, you probably want to remove all of the foliage that's up on the top and maybe see if they're going to come back and wait. We're doing that here, and we've already seen some growth come up from some of our stuff. If it's a bulb, like a society garlic or a lily or something like that, those bulbs usually do pretty well in the ground. So you want to remove the top brown stuff, but it's more than likely that those are going to come back. If you have annual color, as we do here in some places, those guys are pretty much toast. And so we're just going to take those out. They're easy to replace.
Okay. So now what? What are you doing to bring Discovery Green back and to have it have our gardens show like they used to show before?
Well, we have a lot of work ahead of us. We've got 12 acres of stuff that got really burned by the cold. So as you can see, we're going through and we're removing all of the top brown stuff because the new stuff has to grow through that. It can make a real barrier. It also can be a water barrier. It'll keep water from going in, and we have a double whammy here because our irrigation system isn't working. But when you remove all of that mulch that's there on the ground is going to dry out really quickly. And so we want to water this stuff as much as possible. So we're racing against the clock to get our irrigation system fixed, because as we remove that blanket of mulch, we're going to want to put water onto these things and then come back and mulch them. We're going to have to mulch this whole area to protect the ground, also to keep from having a weed issue down the road. So we've got to fix our irrigation system. We've got to remove as much of the dead foliage as we can, and then we're going to have to mulch and water everything to help bring it back as quickly as possible.
And I guess we'll see, give it some time, a couple months, to see if some of these things do come back slowly, and if so, then we'll leave those. If not, I guess there'll be some replacement.
Absolutely. You know, and it's encouraging. We're already seeing signs of growth on some of this stuff. There's some things that I thought were really gone and they're already started to grow back up. So we're definitely going to give it some time. and see.
I noticed some of the holly fern that you trimmed. You can already see the little, I guess it's fronds starting to roll out. So there's definitely life there.
Yeah.
Now, how'd our roses do?
Roses are doing fine. They're from a little bit of a colder climate, so they're able to take some cold. You see roses all over the United States up north, and they're really not affected by the cold. So we should have a really good bloom of roses here in about a month, we're hoping.
I'm sure as everybody knows firsthand how difficult this winter storm was, and you probably are experiencing the same kind of damage that we are here or have here at the park. I would say that Discovery Green is committed to rebuilding these gardens, replanting, and resuming our normal activities so that everyone within Houston and visitors from outside of Houston still have beautiful gardens to enjoy and relax in. We are a nonprofit organization, and it's support from you, the public, that will help us to put these gardens back together. So we do appreciate your help, and give us a few months and I think you'll see the gardens really greened back up. Do you have anything to add, Brian?
No, sir. It's been an interesting experience, and as we said, this was unprecedented cold. So it's a learning experience. But you are absolutely right. We are going to bring these gardens back to their former resplendency.